Okay, Alex. So we're going to start with a very loaded question. Um,
Oh,
what brought you to the field of dietetics?
yeah, that is actually a loaded question. My decision to go into dietetics was influenced by a lot of different things. First of all, I have a family history of like heart disease, diabetes, and that was always talked about in my family growing up. I was never like pushed to eat in a particular way. My family was really great about like, not pushing diets on me or my brother growing up. So that was never a thing for me, but we were very conscious of like our risk factors. And I think when I went to college, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to major in, but I knew I wanted it to be in the science and health field in some way. And then I found nutrition science was a major at my college, NC State. And so I just decided to go into that, hoping to be able to make a career out of it somehow and help other people who maybe also have the same kind of risk factors that I did, to help them, prevent them from getting any of those chronic diseases or conditions that might be caused, as we used to think, by diet or weight. So that was my initial intro to nutrition. And then I also was a gymnast my whole life, did gymnastics through college. And as a collegiate athlete, our performance was very important. And so we talked a lot about diet and weight. And as a gymnast, you can imagine being in a leotard all day long, every day. We were very conscious of what our bodies looked like, and we were always told that we needed to be a certain size to perform better. So all of that talk was really what got me kind of into diet culture more so than like growing up. But that also pushed me even further into the dietetics world. I was very interested in how to eat for peak performance, how to lose weight as efficiently as possible. Like that was my main goal. And maybe a little bit for myself too, right? Like I went into nutrition wanting to help others, but I think secretly in the back of my mind, I wanted to also like change my body and eat perfectly. And those were all the things that I was thinking about as I was going through school. So those were like the two main driving factors for going into dietetics for me.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I feel like
Yeah.
I was not a collegiate athlete. I was more like a D1 partier, I would say, in college. But I like definitely went into the field maybe more conscious of like trying to find that magic answer for me of weight loss and shrinking my body and I was learning all of these tools that I was going to try to help other people do it, but then like wanted to find it for myself too. So before I ask your next question, I have to ask, can you still do like round off back handspring tucks? Like, do you like tell, because I think gymnasts are the most badass athletes. So like, what was your specialty? Like, did you like, was it beam, bars, floor? And like, can you still tumble? I need to know.
So my specialties in college were the bars and vault.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so the less like endurance of the two or of the four events really. But I can honestly say I haven't really done much gymnastics in the last probably like 6 years. I know for a fact I can do a handstand and a cartwheel. I can do probably a round off. I can maybe do a back handspring with a little bit of time and practice. But I'm definitely not as like flexible or springy as I used to be.
Well, I always think about that. So I was not not an athlete, but I did do cheerleading most of my life and took just more like tumbling classes. And I'm like, at
Mhm.
what time, like what day did I do my last round off back handspring back tuck? Because if I kept doing one every day, would I still be able to do it? Because if I tried to go outside and do it right now, I would break every bone in my body. And it makes me so sad because I think like gymnastics is so cool.
Yeah.
Um, It's just, yeah, it's so interesting.
Yeah,
Well, thank
I've been to like, those trampoline parks. So
yes,
I
yes,
I've definitely been to those trampoline parks and I can do more on a trampoline than like on the ground, but it's still I don't have any air awareness anymore. So like
yeah,
you develop this awareness of like I know where the floor is compared to like the air and where I am when I'm flipping. I definitely don't have that anymore. So like I get lost. Kind of how like Simone Biles in the last
yes.
Olympics said that she like got what did she call it?
Is it like the
She
yips?
put like the yeah, it was kind of like the yips almost, but basically she in her vault she got lost in the air.
Yeah.
So that definitely happens to me. Like it's too dangerous. I don't want to do that. I don't want to break
Yeah.
anything.
And that's like so crazy for me to hear that you did it in college and it's like that because I think that's just like a testament we can make this parallel to body image, right? Of like our bodies are always changing and like we used to be able to do things that like we just can't do now and that's okay. Like that is totally
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah,
Um
I've 100% like accepted the fact that I'm just never going to be able to do what I used to do.
yes.
And I'm fine with that. And I'm also more aware of like my limits. And, I'm not going to put my health at risk to try to prove something.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you for chatting gymnastics with me because
Yeah.
I think it is the coolest sport and I could truly talk about it forever. Okay, so we know what brought you into the field of dietetics, but knowing what I know about you, I know that you didn't continue down that path. So when did you have this like aha moment of shifting to a weight inclusive provider and discovering an intuitive eating in general for yourself and for others? Like, how did that shift happen? Because you started in that weight centric model and now you are far from it. So what did that journey look like? You could start personally, professionally, however it kind of unraveled for you.
Yeah, I think I always thought that my relationship with food was great. I never went on any like formal diet. I always was like, moderation, everything in moderation. I ate all the things that I wanted to eat, but I did realize like it wasn't until a few years ago, actually, like during the pandemic, when I started seeing like stuff on Instagram about intuitive eating, which we had no education on in my dietetics programs, like had no idea what intuitive eating was
Same,
until I saw these
same.
Instagram posts. But I started like reflecting on my own relationship with food and realized that even though I still let myself have all the foods that I wanted to eat, I was definitely still restricting in multiple ways. Like I restricted my portion sizes and, I had that mental restriction. I always felt bad for eating those foods that I allowed myself to have. Um, and that shift really happened while I was actually working in a wellness center for a hospital. So we worked with hospital employees, and it was a very weight-centric wellness center. The program really focused on BMI and weight loss for health. And the kicker was that the employees got a massive discount on their health insurance if they participated in this wellness program and like met all these goals that were always like weight loss goals. So I started that and I was like, yeah, this sounds good. Like I wanted to get out of the hospital completely. I used to work with the patients in the hospital and I just was not passionate about that and, needed to do something different. So I was like, okay, this sounds great. But over the course of a couple of years doing this program, I realized that it really wasn't working. Like I saw the same employees over and over and over again. Many of them had had weight loss surgeries and had gained all of their weight back. And like they just had horrible relationships with their bodies and with food. And all of this happened around the same time that I started discovering intuitive eating. And it just clicked with me. I was like, this is wrong. Like this doesn't feel aligned with how I've always kind of felt about food and nutrition, but couldn't like put into words. So I decided to take a step back from that and just branch out on my own and start private practice doing intuitive eating coaching. And that was just because it was hard to find jobs, like people don't hire for that because nobody really knows what it is, especially in like the healthcare world.
Yes, ain't that the truth? And
Yeah.
it is, I have a lot of parallels in my story as your story of like kind of having that aha moment of like not only is this not working for these people, but I'm inducing harm by like trying to
Mhm.
support this. And it's a very disorienting feeling as a medical professional to be like, wait, so everything that I learned is a lie? Like now what do I do? So I know like I obviously know what you do, but I would love for listeners to hear. I know you work with people primarily with PCOS, but anybody who's trying to heal their relationship with food and body. So I would love to ask a PCOS specific question. And I feel like you and I, or we might have talked about this on team meeting last week, of there's so much bullshit on the internet about PCOS and what people should be doing if they have PCOS. So give us some like myth busting 101 for anybody that has PCOS. Like what is the crap that's out there on the internet and debunk it for us.
Oh gosh. There's so much out there. It's ridiculous. And I feel like every time I talk to someone like who has PCOS, I learn something new that's just popped up. I think probably the biggest myth that I hear is that you have to lose weight to improve your symptoms. Like
Mm,
everyone that I've ever talked to that has PCOS has been told by their doctors to lose weight first. Like that's the first thing that they suggest. And that's not helpful. The main reason being that, weight gain or difficulty losing weight is, of course, a lot of things are going to influence a person's weight. So it's not just their health conditions, but it does tend to be a symptom of PCOS. So losing weight is not going to fix the problem. It's not gonna, it's not gonna make the symptoms go away because it in and of itself could be a symptom. So that's probably the biggest myth is that weight loss is going to improve your symptoms. What's actually going to improve your symptoms is going to be, working towards eating more consistently throughout the day. A lot of people don't realize that when they're skipping meals or, just not eating enough food for their body, that does cause issues with hormone balance. And hormone balance is, what PCOS essentially is. Like it's a hormone imbalance condition. So that's not helping if you're not eating consistently throughout the day, but also making sure that you're, getting some form of movement in, because that can help, especially with insulin resistance. And a lot of people with PCOS, even if they don't know they have insulin resistance, they might. It's very, very common. I think estimate is like 80% of people with PCOS have insulin resistance.
mm,
And it could be more because it's so hard to diagnose. So making sure you're moving more, eating consistently, reducing stress is a really important part to improving symptoms because stress is or stress can cause increases in cortisol and also does a number on your sleep. And, all of this is interconnected and can be helpful in improving PCOS symptoms, but losing weight is not the answer.
yes. Yes. Especially like to think about, there are people that reside in all size bodies that have PCOS. And so anytime a doctor or any medical professional, doesn't matter, physician, dietitian, whoever, tells any patient like lose weight to fix XYZ, whatever that is, right? Could be PCOS, could be diabetes, could be anything. It's like, okay, well, what would you tell me if I resided in a smaller body? Because there are people that reside in all size bodies that have these medical diseases and conditions. And so there are,
Absolutely.
right? So there are so many different things that we can focus on uncoupled from intentionally shrinking the body that can be so helpful. So
Yeah.
thank you for shedding light on some of that because I think I've worked with a lot of people with PCOS too, and I just I feel like I'm saying people who have PCOS get blamed for their condition a lot of times because of their body. And
Mm,
that guilt and shame alone can have terrible negative health outcomes and symptoms. And nobody's body caused the disease. And so I'm so happy you brought that up. So
yeah.
so let's pivot to your own relationship with food. I want you to think of like Alex when she was her most disordered, even if she wasn't aware of it, versus Alex now. Like, give me concrete examples of like what was your relationship with food like in your disordered days versus now, what does your relationship with food look like?
Oh, wow. You know what? I've honestly never really tried to like make that comparison. I mean, I've obviously reflected on my relationship with food in the past because that's what helped me heal, but I've never really thought about like what's different now. Um, so I guess when it was the most disordered, I was just really obsessed with like meal prep
Hmm.
and portion control. And then also I was obsessed with like making sure that I was meeting all of the dietary recommendations, which I'm sure a lot of dietitians feel this way. Like, you know, the dietary recommendations, you understand the benefits of like meeting those recommendations. But honestly, they're not easy to meet. And I would stress myself out. Like I would get like anxiety about like not having a vegetable with my meal.
Hmm.
And like thinking back on that now, I'm like, that's just the most ridiculous thing. Why
Hmm.
am I getting anxiety about like not having a vegetable?
Yes. So now when Alex sits down, what does mealtime look like? Like what is your relationship with, and I know it's going to look different at every meal and snack, but like
Yeah.
what is your relationship with food like now?
It's more just about eating in a way that just feels good. Like, I just want to eat food that makes me feel good. I want to eat food that tastes good. I feel a lot more at peace when I don't desire vegetables with my meal. Like I feel fine eating a meal that is just like, I don't know, just a sandwich and not have to have like a side of carrots with it just because like, you know. So I think it's just more freeing and more go with the flow. It's less structured. That was a big thing for me was I needed my meals to be more structured and I just wanted to know what I was eating every day. And now it's like, yeah, that's convenient. It's nice to know what I'm going to eat. It's nice to have food already made, portioned out, but I'm okay with things not being perfect. And I think that's like the biggest difference. I wanted it to be perfect so bad, but like perfection doesn't exist.
It does not. And usually the growth happens in the gray areas, right? Not the black and white or the perfect, but the messy gray area. So
Yeah.
I know we've gotten a lot of, I feel like we share them in our Slack channel, the client wins. We've gotten a lot of positive feedback on people that you've been meeting with one-on-one. But I would love to hear from you. What is your favorite part of supporting clients 101? Like, of course, hearing their successes is always great, but like when you're working with a client one-on-one to help them make peace with food or to manage PCOS, like what is your favorite part about supporting clients one-on-one?
Um, my favorite part is really seeing the light bulb moment with my clients. Like, building the relationship with them is amazing. And I love having these relationships with all of these clients, but also just like when we're working together one on one, like in the session, and just seeing a light bulb go off. Like I might ask a question and they're like, they start answering it, and then they realize, like, I've never even thought of that. Like, that was never even a thing that I would have considered would have like affected me this much. And just having those moments It's just like I don't know. I don't know how to describe it. It's just it feels so good to help people like start to, I don't know, understand themselves better.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that. That kind of reminds me of what you're explaining. I had a client explain it to me once of like when she was like, before I started meeting with you, I saw she kind of used like the Wizard of Oz as an analogy. I love a good analogy. She's like, I saw the world in black and white, and now like going through this intuitive eating journey, like I see the world in color, and it's just like such a different lens. Like I could be looking at the same thing, but I'm seeing it completely different. And
Mm,
like seeing like what you're talking about, like seeing clients find like almost what you were talking about with your own personal journey, right? Like less anxiety around food, more
mhm,
freedom, like more go with the flow. Like it's it is such a beautiful thing to see because it's not only just with their food, it affects like all these other avenues in their life, like their relationships, right? Their hobbies, their like so many things and seeing those things in front of you and watching their growth is such a rewarding thing. So I totally know what you mean, but it can be hard to explain to someone when it's like it's not
yeah.
like a necessarily like a specific thing. It's just it's that growth and like you said, the light bulb moments. That is a perfect way to describe it.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. And I love just seeing my clients like get to a point where food doesn't take over their entire lives. Like you said, like it affects everything in your life. And to hear them say, like, I was able to go to my like sister's birthday party and not even care about the food that like not, worry about it and just enjoy my time with my sister and, wish her happy birthday. Like that's the first time that's ever happened. And it's just, it feels so good to hear that.
Yes. Yes, I love that. And I love that example. So for to wrap this episode, obviously we talked about a bunch of different things, but if people could leave this episode and they might forget a lot of what we talked about, but if they could remember one thing, maybe it's a mantra you have around food, maybe it's just something that you want people to hear. Like if they could only remember one thing, it could be related to what we talked about, it could be completely unrelated. What do you want our listeners to remember?
Oh, um, I think that like, life is short and there's so much more we can be doing with our time than obsessing over food and weight. And like part of enjoying life is enjoying food. So that's really my biggest takeaway just in general from going through my own journey of intuitive eating. It's just like there's so much more out there. You might as well just enjoy life while you can.
Mm, I love that so much. I put up a video. I don't know if I posted it yet. I who knows with social media, but you and I were talking off air about like grief and loss and things that come up. And when I was at a funeral recently, it's like again, it's like a dark thought, but it parallels to what you were saying of like our body is so unimportant, like especially when we leave this earth. And so it was so reflective to be like what do we want people to remember about us, right? What do we want people to say about us when we leave this planet? And I feel like that's such a like you were saying there's so much more to life because a lot of people leave this life and their body may be cremated. It might not even exist anymore in the world, but the
Mhm.
memory of us lives on and the way we made people feel, like people will remember that. And it was such a powerful lesson like to in perspective shift this week and so i I share that because it goes so well with what you were saying of like there is so much more to life and you and I like being in this space we know that and we want other people to hear that because we don't want anyone to have to live another second of their life being obsessed with food in their body when they could be living such a joyful life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. So Alex, for those who are listening, I know that you have an Instagram page that, in addition to, of course, supporting clients at Find Food Freedom, that you do a lot of good educational content on. So where can people find you on Instagram?
Yeah, so my handle is PCOS.nutritionist.alex.
Perfect. And we will link that in the show notes. And we will also link the link to get the benefits checked and to work with you. So we'll make sure that people have everything that they need to get the support they're looking for.
Perfect.